Welcome to the Starting Over podcast. I am your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is where we look at the strategy, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of HeroClix. And today I have a special guest. I have Mr. Howard Brock, the league organizer from HeroClix Online with the HC Realms League. Say hello to the nice people, sir.
Hello, everyone.
And as you can tell, he is in a hidden dimension somewhere, tinkering with all of the magical numbers that requires him to really concentrate on the issues at hand at running the league. And so that's why he has a nice little echo, like a space super leader should. Okay.
We'll call it the Clicks Cave.
The Clicks Cave. There we go. Hopefully there's a Batmobile in there and a giant penny. All right.
I haven't found it yet, but it's a pretty big cave.
Okay. I need to have one of those as well. All right. Let's get into it. One major reason some people might be wondering is, like, why is Mr. Brock on here? You know, we mainly talk about, the tactics of HeroClix. Well, and mainly in the tabletop area. And so what I wanted to do is I want to bring Mr. Brock on here to talk about the influences of online HeroClix play, because I do know there are a few listeners that just mainly that mainly play online. So what I wanted to do is I want to bring Mr. Brock on here so he can give us some insight into the game. And if you're interested in getting into it, but you're not quite sure where to start, I think we could probably hash some things out to help you get into HeroClix Online if that's something that you want to get into. So, Mr. Brock, starting off, what major changes does a person need to be made aware of that's going on in HeroClix Online right now?
Well, there's been a lot of recent changes just in the last week. Probably the biggest thing that everybody's talking about is the price decrease. I don't know how much everyone is familiar with HCO, but one of the biggest criticisms has been when they went from what we call the free beta phase into the paid beta phase, that people objected to the pricing, specifically that of Hammer of Thor. And in the last week, all of those prices have been reduced, and it's much more affordable. And from what I've seen, people are liking it a whole lot.
Okay. And the Hammer of Thor set for a while was like the only set that you can play. And now there's a lot more diversity. It's still not every HeroClix figure ever, but there's a lot more figures that are available, correct?
Oh, there's a lot more that's available. The first set, like you said, was Hammer of Thor, and when they came into the paid beta, the first two things that you could get was the Fantastic Four starter set, and you could also get the Hammer of Thor set, and that was pretty much it. And what they've done since then, they've added Infinity Challenge, and I want to come back to that because that's kind of interesting how that happened. Anyways, they added in Infinity Challenge, and then they started adding in Blackest Night, they added in Smallville, Superman, they've added in the Green Lantern sets, the Green Lantern movie set, and then they started previewing the Galactic Guardians Gravity Feed. We got a few of those figures, and what we have now is all of that still, but they're also doing a Figure of the Week program with two more sets, and that would be Web of Spider-Man and Giant Size X-Men. And one figure from each one of those sets is previewed every week, and you can purchase it for a very small fee. And you get to keep those figures, and what we're thinking. HCO is a little closed-mouthed about where they're going, what they're going to be, what they put out there. It's something that I kind of object to, but they are a little closed-mouthed. But it looks to me like at some point we'll have the full sets of both those.
Okay. And just wondering, when we get the previews of characters and we look at the character card and it has those digital sculpts, are those digital sculpts the same as we get in the cards and same in the game?
Yes, they're very identical. They look very cool. Everybody needs to do this. If you go online and you do play HeroClix Online, zoom into the character. You can go right down and stand basically in front of the character. It gives you all kinds of views on the map. You can look at it from the right side, the left side, overhead, angle, and then you can zoom in from any of those sides. And of course, it's 3D, but you literally will go face to face with Juggernaut if that's what you're looking at. And it's the little sculpt that you see on the tabletop. It comes to life. It's right there in front of it. And in fact, some of them even have special effects. For example, just on the top of my head, I won't remember all of them, but I know that the Spider-Man sculpt holding the hammer on Hammer of Thor lights up, like his hammer's lighting up, so it looks even a little bit cooler than it would on the tabletop.
Okay. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. I know some people are really into sculpts, and some people are really into modding, and so sort of seeing what the digital artist had in mind initially, and then what's feasible when you're translating that into a physical, stationary medium. That's
from what I understand, and I could be wrong about this, but I think that what they have done recently is Icarus is designing the clicks, putting them, they're actually doing the 3D clicks for all the newer sets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already there, where I guess what I'm trying to say is it's coming from there. When they put these figures into the game, they designed them themselves. That's where WizKids is using now, NECA is using now to do their art designs and stuff. That's where all the modding and everything's done. That's my understanding. I could be wrong about that, but that's what somebody told me. And now what they have to do with the older sets is that it's a little bit more complicated for them. They have to go back and basically recreate it. They have to take what's there and then put it in the computer.
Yeah, and I figure also that is sort of like a dressing up, because I know when I look at some of my older figures from, Universe, Infinity Challenge, Hyper Time, all that, some of the sculpts are okay, but they don't really match the sculpt quality that we have now with some of the newer sets. So if you could sort of,
that's totally correct. But I think that one of the other problems we have, especially if you go back and look at those Infinity pieces that we all have, the paint work wasn't done as good either. And so that's not the problem when they put it on HCO. You don't see the paint, the flaw in the paint and stuff. It looks a little bit better, I think.
Yeah. So with that, is the sculpt quality of the Infinity Challenge pieces, noticeable or comparable to like their previous version, or is it like if this figure was made today, this is how it would look? What is the image look like for those classic pieces?
Well, I think it looks exactly like the old image does, except that you don't see the flaw in the paintwork, and the details are a little bit better as far because they don't have to flaw them. But the actual scope is pretty much the same, but it does look better.
Oh, that's good to know, because I know some people, when you get them into the game and you try to give them some older figures, and then they look at the newer figures, and I've had it happen where some people are wondering, is this the same game? I see the dial and all, but did you
there's been a lot of things that's changed. Then look at the way dials have changed over the years to what we're to now, and the way the sculpts are done, and even the size of the sculpts has changed somewhat. They're kind of going to different sizes a little bit, so it doesn't always totally match up. Another good set, which we don't have online yet, but to me, I love the set, but the quality of paintwork and stuff was very poor, and that would be Clobber in Time, but it's one of everybody's favorite sets.
I I remember some figures from if I can talk properly, Clobbering Time, and I will say I didn't play too much of it. I ended up playing against it, and so that's why it sort of stays in my head. But that's a whole different set
Well,
of
I think
issues.
it's another good example of the figures, the scopes being okay, but the paintwork not being so good.
Okay. And that's more than fair assessment when it comes to something like that. Another thing that, and now we're going to sort of start getting into a little bit of the meta stuff, is we have had multiple changes, evolutions, de-evolutions, if some might consider that, of the game of HeroClix in all this time. So how is like Infinity Challenge competing against like Blackest Night, or how is some of the older sets really coming in and mixing with the newer stuff and creating this this meta? What pieces are actually coming back like, oh wow, I forgot how scary this was, or oh wow, man, this figure wasn't that good before, but combined with this figure and this figure, I'm able to do something completely unique because I don't have to worry about Y and Z figure.
Well, and we're talking about Hammer of Thor, and we're talking about Infinity Challenge, I guess, is probably the best comparison, because that's Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, you've got the DC in there, but let's just use those for good examples.
Okay.
I think that you're on the opposite spectrum there, where you have high damage, high attack, big point value pieces in Hammer of Thor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you compare those value to value, points-wise, to what's in IC, the IC figures do not stack up. For example, the old Infinity Challenge Thanos, he's really cool and everything, but he's not going to match up with Thor.
Yeah.
Thor will just plainly kick his butt. He's got some good things to him, but he doesn't match up.
Mm-hmm.
Or to an Ultron. Anything around his point value, he's not going to match up to. But, on the other hand, the lower value figures that are in Infinity Challenge is where you get your value from. You have your probability controls for a cheap value. You have Jean Grey as a TK piece that's very cheap, and then you've got your Black Panthers.
Yeah.
That help tie into theme teams, if you want to build an Avengers team, and you got your cheap outwit, free movement, and so it's bringing those back. And then you have your nastiness like Firelord, who was always the complaint of being broken, and he competes just fine with a TKer against Hammer and Thor because he can hold his own. And he's not in. You can have more than one Firelord on your team to stack up against, example, Thor. So it's those pieces work fine. It's the pieces that don't work fine are going to be like your Kang and your Ultron. And Ultron is not so bad, but your vet Ultron is not that good. But your experienced Ultron is still in a decent price range and can do some things. The other thing about IC that is different that people have forgotten about is how deep their dials are. Even their little cheap figures, you just don't kill them off as quickly as you do. The dials have gotten shorter on the cheaper pieces over time. If you take a 30 or 40 point figure now, it's probably got 4 or 5 clicks of life. And back then, you could have up to 7 clicks of life. So it's a little different.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because I saw when I went through and I saw all the figures that you can put together on HeroClix Online. The first thing that I noticed was, like you said, most of the higher point figures, you're not playing those. They don't stack up for points. But there's things in there that you can get that's sort of ridiculously silly.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at the combinations, you're like, oh man, I really didn't think about that. And just some notable figures from Infinity Challenge that came to my mind. The Rookie Shield Medic, 12 points,
Yeah.
shield ability, plus you get support. Yes, you have a 6
Right.
attack, but
And you can shoot.
yeah, you have shield TA in a medic. Scroll Agent for 11 points for your wild card teams. Boomerang. Now some people might hate on me for this one, but Boomerang is 44 points, triple target, energy explosion on his first click, and if you're able to team him up and with Bruce Banner from Hulk,
Right.
then yeah, you're just going to do some really nasty things. And again, I don't think that one got introduced yet. But when I know that they're going to bring him in. But the moment that he comes in, Boomerang is going to be worth a ton.
You talking about the LE?
No, the common one, the one that boosts energy explosion damage.
Yeah, I mean, you said Bruce Banner.
Yeah, the common Bruce Banner with Boomerang, Vet Boomerang.
Okay.
Yeah, that combination would be killer. Of course, you have your rookie Jean
I
Grey.
know what I get you now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's another killer combo. I mean, I was mentioning Firelord, which is ridiculously cheap with a long dial, easy to heal, and does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
With the Doctor Strange out of Galactic Guardians, Gravity Feed, because it gives him energy. It gives him energy shield deflection. So I mean, and also perplex. So those two side by side are pretty nasty too.
Oh wow, that's something I didn't even think about. Oh wow, that is pretty good. Now, the other one that I felt that sort of did stack up, you do have to keep them with a medic, is the 146 point LE Annihilus, because he has running shot, pulse wave, 10 range. He has a 16 defense, which means you're going to be healing him a lot. But if you just slingshot him out there, perplex up his damage, single target pulse wave, bring him back.
He is a copycat also. So I mean, if you throw him in there with a Hammer of Thor, say Malcolm, that's a Mystic, then you got that Mystic team ability too.
Yeah, and when you start looking at some of the other figures from DC that you can add in there, it gets real silly real fast. Definitely, I will say I'm a fan of the Smallville 100-point Supergirl. She does exactly what she needs to do and does it well. And I start thinking her with Jean Grey, or her teamed up with rookie Black Panther, or with rookie Pyro, so that there's barrier defense. All sorts of things, come to mind. So I think there's a lot of fun to be had if you set it up with the Infinity Challenge sets.
Well, again, that Doctor Strange that they got really scares me a heck of a lot. One, you can play multiple ones, but two is he's one of those figures that make average figures really good, and he makes great figures really great. I mean, you throw him on a Superman or that Supergirl, and all of a sudden they got energy shield deflection on top of their already pretty high defenses. They're pretty nasty. I mean, you have to shoot through Superman already with an 18-19 defense, which is hard, and he's got Bob. Got to do it twice. Now, if you're shooting at him and you got Doctor Strange there, now you're up to 20, 21. That's nasty.
Yeah, and even let's really think about this for the general meta and overall. If they ever bring into AC Online some of the Colossals from Galactic Guardians, some of them have base 20 defense. So you're teaming up, high attack values and all this other nice stuff on your team. And, pretty much behind this Colossal is Doctor Strange. And he's just like, oh, yeah, we have a 22 defense for our nice Colossal champion here. Yeah, good luck with you with your 11 attack.
Well, it forces you to have to go and deal with Doctor Strange to begin with. You have to go deal with that guy even before you can deal with the other piece.
Yeah. And I was trying to explain to a general person online. There's a guy named Absman, but it's supposed to be like Absorbing Man in abbreviation. And he has a formula, and I encourage people to check it out just to make you think, not necessarily to believe the formula. But he has a numerical value that he gives to various pieces in a set, and he has several sets that he's given values to. And that Doctor Strange, he gave a below value to, just for the pure fact that it can be killed easily and it can't attack. And I wanted to say to him, it's like, you know, hey, buddy, if you come after my Doctor Strange, I've attacked you 5-6 times, or I've done a lot of damage to you. Yeah.
You either got to you have to have wasted effort into outwitting Doctor Strange, or you have to deal with him straight up. And again, he doesn't have the greatest defense in the world, but a 16 isn't a guaranteed hit either. Even if you outwitted his energy shield deflection.
Yeah.
And remember, he does have perplex, so what's he going to be perplexing? He can perplex his defense, he can perplex whatever piece he's attached to his defense.
Yeah.
And then on down the line, he gets some other things that's kind of nasty. If I remember correctly, psychic blast, support,
probability control,
and probability.
Yeah. That's the thing where I looked at him and I said with Doctor Strange, I said he's going to show up in Gen Con on somebody's team.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just
a lot of them.
Yeah, shoot. If people fielded multiple Doctor Stranges, I would cry inside, just a bit. Yes, I know you're getting double perplex, and yes, I know you have if one of the Doctor Strange possibly goes down, you have a certain advantage because you have a second.
I faced recently online. I faced a team that was pretty nasty, and it was a theme team,
mm-hmm.
and it had Valkyrie, the hot super rare Valkyrie.
Oh.
Right, and which has got an 18 defense super senses already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It has a move and attack ability, charge.
Yeah.
Does high damage, has super strength, a very good piece.
Yeah.
And it had 2 Doctor Stranges attached to it. So you had the double perplex, you had the energy, you had a piece with an 8 super senses, and from range had a 20 defense, possibly a 21 on hindering. And then that was not an easy team to deal with.
Oh,
if you do hit the Doctor Stranges, you're allowed to throw them on, like I said, probability, healing. So you hit one, and he goes and runs back over here, and then you hit another one, and he heals that one. I mean, it was a pretty nasty team, and then you also had the theme props to deal with.
Oh, and the worst part of it is that if you have like a wild card and you knock that Doctor Strange onto support, all he's going to do is like, oh yeah, copy defenders, get my low defense. Now I'm going to heal.
Well, she is a defender.
Oh yeah.
So she's giving the 18 to the Doctor Strange anyway.
Yeah, and then when they're healing, he's giving the 16. So it's or the 15. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh gosh. It's one of those pieces, people, if you get it online or in real life, either or play it. It's an excellent piece. But anyway, sort of going on, do you see, like in average play, do you see a lot of people staying Marvel only? Do you see a lot of people mixing it up or going DC only? What's the most common thing that you see in the meta when playing online?
Well, that depends. Obviously, we had, which we'd recently talked about, but I mean, there is something that came out when we were putting the league together that we didn't know, and that was that neither Marvel or DC want their figures mixed online for sanctioned events. They don't really care other than that, but if it's a sanctioned event where prizes are given out, they don't want their pieces mixed. Our original league had DC and Marvel mixed in, and we had to revise it, and we became a Marvel-only league. So that being said, I'm seeing mostly Marvel right now. I mean, even people playing practice games and stuff like that are playing in the tournaments, they're playing Marvel because that's what the focus is.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, I think you saw a lot of new people coming on, and the easiest, most powerful thing to grab to put a team together and have a meta team, so to speak, was to grab the Smallville set because you could throw a 150-point Superman and a 100-point Supergirl, and throw in a Lex Luthor, or throw in a what's the guy's name? Steel.
Yeah.
You had a theme team, and a powerful theme team at that. So we started seeing a lot of the Superman set out there, and it's really hard to, at least in HCO, and possibly it's even debatable about tabletop right now. I mean, it's 150 points of Superman with Prob. It's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's real strong, and with my personal gameplay, I've done my best to sort of say, hey, I have to expect either the common Superman or the Fast Forces Superman to show up, but I have so much personal favor for Supergirl that it's not funny.
I've seen 3 Supergirl teams too. I mean, they put 3 Supergirls on a team, 300 points.
Yeah,
and it ain't bad.
Yeah, it almost reminds you of. I hate to say it like this. It reminds you of the old rookie Shazams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
which I used to play, and I liked to. I played him a lot. I went to the World one year and had a really strong finish, and I had 2 Shazams on my team.
Yeah.
With cards.
Yeah, with cards, of course. It's not a double Shazam team if it didn't have feats. I hate to say it like this, like those were the days, you know.
Well, the cards had a good intent. I think that the problem with the cards is made the intent was, I think, to make figures that were not being played more playable, and that worked. The only problem is that it made powerful figures more powerful.
Yeah, that's another thing where I'm going to say the following statement, and it's been on the record of me saying this before. I think if we had feats now in HeroClix, I think it would be a good idea for the following reasons. First off, they need to make a rule where it says special powers and feats do not interact anymore. And people don't understand. Before feats interacted with special powers, things were sort of tame. Things were a lot more balanced, and a lot of figures with special powers that had good special powers weren't considered because they didn't work with feats. So you did have that balancing act of, oh yeah, I could play this, but man, you know, I really want to play this awesome figure as well that has a special power, but I can't play with that feat, so you have to choose between the feat or that special power. When they said, hey, guess what, we're putting peanut butter and jelly together and we're making an awesome sandwich, then people couldn't let that go. So
I see what you're saying. I don't have a problem with it. It kind of alludes to what I was saying earlier, go back to your old figures and let's bring out a card called Protected. Putting Protected on a Destiny is one thing, but putting it on an Icon Superman is another.
Another thing, yeah. And then I would say, you know, figures only have access to feats if they don't have special powers. If they don't have a special power on that click. So you could say, hey, I have, you know, X Superman who has a special power that says he ignores all damage but 1. Well, guess what? You can't put Fortitude on him for that click. You know, when he gets impervious.
It's not right to have that in Protected and anything else that you got. I mean, it gets a little old, and I agree with that.
Yeah. And I think what would happen is the whole Nightcrawler and Bullseye debacle and all the silver bullets that came out to deal with Nightcrawler really came down to one reason. there was no trick shot anymore.
Yep.
Trick shot was like the most commonest thing to deal with pretty much any sort of stealth figure, any sort of figure that decided that they wanted to hide behind other figures. It would solve for the new Doctor Strange. It solved for your defend pieces. It solved for so much. And yeah, go ahead.
See, that's where Captain America came in. He's got trick shot pretty much, but it's even better.
Yeah, it's super trick shot. And my last argument why feats are still good and that they should be considered again is that pretty much they're giving feats as special powers. If you look at the chases from Superman set, each one of those figures pretty much has the equivalent of a feat. I think the Knight Superman has pretty much the equivalent of protected. The other Superman that dies and comes back pretty much has Lazarus Pit. So
they're taking the cards and just applied them to the figures.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of figures that are out that are mimicking camouflage in some form or another. They're mimicking camouflage or the intent of camouflage. So
I agree with that. I think that was their intent with the cards to begin with. The only problem is if they made the cards specific for characters instead of being able to use them for just about any character, that's where the flaw was.
Yeah, and I understand you would increase your R&D if you had to make feats for everyone, but I sort of had the feeling, and this is, I know we're getting off topic, but initially on the WizKids site, before cards came out, and this is, feats are predominant. I think I said this during Supernova or was it Critical Damage? Did I say Critical Damage? Oh gosh, man, I'm tired. Okay, but back during that.
What you talking about the set?
Yeah.
So the cards came out with was it Mutant Mayhem? I think wasn't that the first set?
Feats came out in Mutant Mayhem, but I sort of had this idea. Well, anyway, let me get into my idea. My idea pretty much was that's collateral damage, not critical damage.
Right.
The idea was you would make a stack of cards, and the cards would be, say, like, a character named Thor can do the following. Pay this amount of points per power that you pick. So you would say, like, I want my Thor to have Lightning Strike. Give Thor Energy Explosion. When he does Energy Explosion, it does a set 2 damage instead of 1. I want my Thor to have, Unfailing Strength, for 35 points, Thor gets +1 and cannot be outwitted. Stuff like that. You would have multiple options on that card, but it would be like for that character. So it would be like Captain America.
That's kind of what I'm saying. And they designed those cards really for characters, but they got abused to others, and some of those characters that it got abused to really kind of cheesed the game up, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah, and then they introduced other figures. And again, people, we are talking about before special powers of how things could get really out of hand. There were some other figures that they specifically designed counter to the comic books so that they couldn't abuse feats. And that
Haymaker.
Oh gosh, Haymaker was so good. Nova Blast was so good. They nerfed so many figures to make sure that they didn't have Perplex and Outwit on the same dial because they were too cheap, so they couldn't Brilliant Tactician. That to me was sort of like the point where I said, this is out of hand. Another thing, and I think I've brought this up on the show before, like I was a judge back during old WizKids era, and when they finally had the argument about why should feats be justified to be used with special powers, I told them what's going to happen is you're going to have something that's really strong, and then it gets multiplied to other figures, and it'll be a really strong broken effect that you can't stop. And
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, but it really got crazy. It became a card game more than it did a figure game because I can remember before they put the limitations on how much point value and cards you could have on your force. I remember going to a convention and I saw a guy with his team at the World, and he had one figure, and the figure that he had was Zoom, and everything else was cards. He had card upon card upon card upon card stacked on this guy.
Oh, that sucks. Oh,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Though it became a card game instead of a figure game.
I think the worst experience that I had with that, and then we'll just sort of leave this and move on, is I told judges, I was like, Mr. Fantastic plus Brilliant Tactician should never exist. For the pure fact that you get Super Perplex and then you get to use that Super Perplex how you like to anyone that at the time had just shared team symbol. It didn't errata yet for a keyword. And I was like, this is ridiculous. You're giving +2 to things. You're giving +2 to Illuminati. Sorry, not Illuminati. You're giving +2 to anybody on the Fantastic Four. And it's like that Johnny Storm becomes a monster. That Sue Storm becomes a monster. Heck, even, Mr. Fantastic himself becomes ridiculous. And then you just say, like, yeah, my whole team has it. It's silly.
Oh, you're totally right. But, I mean, even if they were to, the protected card was probably the most common card out there, I think. And you got 20 defense figures with a protected card. That's a little ridiculous. I mean, there should have been some kind of prerequisite on that anyway, that you didn't have to hit something with 20. And even worse, if you put it on, say, something with Impervious, then they got to roll Impervious, and if they missed on, then they throw the protected card out there. It's just it just got so abused and so ridiculous. It's bad enough. I just hated that you had to roll a 9, 10, 11 to hit something, and you finally hit it, and then you didn't.
Yeah. It was like, I hit protected. That didn't happen.
I mean, it's bad enough I got to roll this high anyway, but now I got that. I got to do it twice, maybe, if I even get another chance.
Yeah. So, sort of shifting back to HeroClix Online. All right. We have, and again, we went on our cheese tirade, and our
I can see the problem that you and I are going to have is as we talk about one subject, we got so many other passionate subjects that we're going to spin off on.
Yeah, but when we look at like the old cheese, did people complain when Fire Lord came out, or everyone's like, okay, we can
not really.
Now.
I think that you had the people that were, I guess, what you would call anti-HCO, kind of. Why you bring an Infinity Challenge? You remember the first interview I told you I wanted to come back and touch that, and kind of the way that happened is we were online one day, and Justin, the president of WizKids, occasionally comes online, jumps in our chat room, and he was online that day, and the people that were playing had been playing for a while, and started talking, giving us little tidbits about what he wanted to do and what we thought about this and what was wrong with the game and yada yada. And the subject came up about what would we want to see for the next set. Would we want to see a newer modern set, or would we rather see an old set? And if it was an old set, what would we want it to be? And surprisingly, and it wasn't my vote, but the people that were online at that time said they wanted to see Infinity Challenge. And that's what we got. We got Infinity Challenge as the next set. I believe that conversation that night. Now, what initially happened is when it was announced, you had the people in Realms and online and other places like, what the heck, why are you putting out a new set online? It's Infinity Challenge, the oldest set there is that nobody wants to play, and why not a new set or whatever? And I understand that, but what was funny to me is that they had a poll on Realms, I don't know, maybe 6 to 7, 8 weeks ago, and it was talking about the Gauntlet,
Mm-hmm.
tournaments that we got going on. And I suppose I haven't been playing in those myself, but I think there's some kind that the format changes month to month,
Yeah.
and there's some kind of format to where you take an older set or you take another set and you use that set like a floor or something
Yeah.
for that week, that month. And they voted online, and guess what they chose? Out of all the sets they could have chosen from, they chose Infinity Challenge. So, if that was such a bad thing when they went to HCO, why did you want to play it on tabletop when you had a choice?
Yeah, and that's a good thing to sort of bring up. I will say when you put everything in the mix, some of the older figures, actually work out, and they actually fill in some of the roles that, hate to say it, people, we might complain about, but we go back to constantly in our team building. Cheap TK, cheap outwit, cheap perplex, cheap prop. Those staples always come back up. We can debate on cheap support, because cheap support has always been cheap support, but also need to be able to hit something. So, like I did bring up, what was it? That one shield agent, by saying, the shield agent and the shield medic. Sorry, the shield medic. It's like, why is a 6 attack and 12 points worth it? I'm like, well, let's look. If you're playing with Infinity Challenge, those suckers get down to like a 10 defense sometimes or 11 defense. Like, it's not that hard to heal with a 6 attack. You're going to hit more often than you think.
More often than not, especially if you got something like a Scarlet Witch laying around. I'll tell you what, Ed. I'll tell you something that a way of looking at this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It can maybe put it in perspective. That what I think is kind of neat about HCO is as a HeroClix player right now, you basically have 3 universes to choose from. Now, I'm not talking about DC. I'm not talking about Marvel or any of the other stuff. I'm talking about 3 play universes. And those 3 play universes, number 1, you got Golden, which is on tabletop, and you got everything. And you have all the intermingling of characters and cards, anything that you want to do there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I'm not a Golden player myself because I played more in the modern age because I got tired of cards, which we've been talking about earlier, but I got tired of the cards. So I like to deal more in the modern age. Well, then that's the other universe. You have the modern age. In the modern age, mixes everything up that you've got right now. It changes every year, but it's a universe to itself, and you only have those legal characters. Well, now you got a third universe over there, and that's HCO. And HCO has created something that you wouldn't do. You wouldn't build these teams for the most part in either one of those universes, because you have different sets that are legal there right now and available there that are the prime sets, and they mix together. So you end up building totally different teams and thinking a totally different way of putting things together, and you end up playing pieces that would probably sit on your shelf otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, that's the uniqueness about it, is it's really, it's like it's the same game, but it's a different game.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, if someone told me, like, hey, you will actually consider Boomerang as a strategic piece to play in a game, that Boomerang from Infinity Challenge, I'll be like, are you crazy? Are you on drugs? Those are the things that would go through my head. But then when I start thinking about, like, hey, I don't have to worry about X, Y, and Z. Like, I don't have to worry about a bunch of figures with 10, 12 range and running shot gunning down my guy, or I don't have to worry about his defense because I have active people that can give me defend, or I don't have to worry about pushing because I can team him up with Doctor Strange and he can give me energy shield. These other elements that come in, I'm like, oh wow, so these things are now viable because I don't have to think about these other crazy things that exist showing up.
Well, what I've seen also is some people have built soldier teams. That's a good example of intermixing pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Is you take a Captain America, who we all hate love,
Yeah.
and you throw him in there with your cheap shield pieces, and you now up his range all the way possibly up to 11, his damage all the way up to a possible 5, and you've got a theme team now because it's a soldier team.
Yeah.
And oh, hey, by the way, Rocket Raccoon, who is a prob, is also a soldier, and so you got that prob plus all the other things. That's where I'm trying to say is you've got things that you normally probably would never think about playing together. It's a whole other universe to itself.
Yeah. And I think that's where people can come in and sort of say, do you want something different? And I think that's the best thing for you to look at HCO over anything else.
Well, what would be? I'll tell you this: as a tabletop player,
mm-hmm.
what's the worst thing that happens at a venue?
Someone steals your pieces.
Week in and week out. What's the worst thing?
Someone steals your pieces. Not that happens.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, the worst thing at a venue is that you go up and everybody keeps bringing the same old teams.
Yeah.
And which happens because, I mean, if you're winning prizes, so what you start seeing is, say, a Metron Nightcrawler every week. I mean, is that fun?
You know what? Yeah,
it gets kind of old after a while.
It does.
I mean, it's fun initially trying to beat them, but then you spend maybe even design a team, or you get another team, or you get a Metron Nightcrawler of your own that compete against them. It gets old, and I had venues. I used to be a judge, and I intentionally came up with formats to keep that from happening. Because if you just run a 300-point constructed every week, that's exactly what's going to happen. Somebody designs their team, they like it, they're just going to keep playing it, and that's what happens. Well, that doesn't happen really in HCO. I mean, because it's a different mixture of figures, and people change things around a lot. And lo and behold, it's even better when we get new stuff in, and it changes everything again.
Yeah, and the one thing that you sort of touched on about being, a judge and about having weird events and things that challenge people and make them think. So how is that going to be reflected in some of the tournaments, if you can talk about that for your plans for HeroClix Online League? What creativity do you want to put in there?
Have done, we're talking about the league now, and I like to distinguish the tournaments and the league. I mean, the league technically, in a way, I guess you could be termed as a tournament, but we try to define that a little bit differently, so it's not to mix up with the actual tournaments that are online.
Mm-hmm.
So we like to say league instead. Anyway, our formats we can make the formats how we wish. I mean, we have some stipulations, of course. For example, it has to be Marvel characters only, and we have Marvel prizes. But that's, to the outside of that, we did kind of what we want to do. The first league that we ran, we required one piece out of Infinity Challenge, one piece out of Hammer of Thor, or Hammer of Thor Fast Forces. That was two of your choices. Your third choice was it had to be one piece either from Fantastic Four starter set or from the Hulk starters, the Fast Four set, or from the new preview figures they got coming out. You had to have one of those. So that was your base 3 minimum. Then past that, you could do what you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And those kind of things are what we're probably going to continue to do. The next League 2, we don't know yet what we're going to do. We're waiting to see if they come out with a new complete set. If they do, we'll probably run a floor. Floors, I always like floors because it's something that encompasses all the pieces and makes you mix things up a little bit. And after that, who knows what we'll do? I mean, I mean, you can always play with the point totals. You can come up with keywords. You can come up with point values on the figures. You can say, oh, this is going to be a female-only league, only female league. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do. We will probably at some point touch on all those, and I like doing that because I don't like the mundane. I don't like the same old all the time. That's where, when I was a clicks player, that's where I got bored.
Mm-hmm.
And I also try to deviate away from things. The other thing I try to do as a judge is I tried to make it a little bit more, where the parity was a little bit better. To give, you've got some guys out there that got a lot of figures, a lot of money, but they're just better players, or sometimes all three. And you've got the other guy, the average Joe that comes in there that's got limited players, and he's an average player, but he likes playing every week, but he gets annihilated every week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to create formats to give those guys a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it was build the worst team you can, and then you swap teams when you start the tournament. But it was more fun, and it gave people a chance.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it all the time. You still have to have your core 300-point, build your best team that you can in there as often as possible. But you just don't want to do it every week.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that for a fact. Oh, wow. So, anyway, this is Mr. Howard Brock, and you could tell that he really does care about the HeroClix Online League. And so for all guests, and definitely first-time guests that come on the show, I asked them a out-of-the-box question. And and considering you do HeroClix Online, I am going to challenge you with a HeroClix Online question.
Okay.
All right. If you knew you were going to face the best HeroClix Online player ever, and it's not yourself, and you were told that the only stipulation was you could pick any figure you want, but you had to play. Let me spin the wonderful dial. You had to play Scarecrow from Blackest Night, and you had to use one of the one of the event dials, and it would be Ragnarok. Who would you pick, and why?
Okay, I want to make sure I understand the question correctly.
You're going to play.
We're talking about picking one figure against one figure?
No, you're going to build I should clarify. It's going to be a 300-point team. You're going to build a 300-point team. You have to play Scarecrow from the Blackest Night, and you're playing the Ragnarok. What is it? The event dial.
That's what I'm facing?
That's what those are your stipulations. 300 points, Ragnarok event dial, and you have to play Scarecrow. What would you do?
Well, that to me is not that hard of a question to answer. I want to make sure I want to ask one question though. Is Scarecrow 75 points?
He's 85 points.
85 points. I would play Thor. I would just throw one figure and I'd play Thor with Scarecrow.
There you go. The man knows his stuff. Because even I was thinking, like, what is he going to say? All right. Well, this is the Starting Over podcast. I hope you appreciate a little deviation from the normal meta talk. Definitely considering we gave you 3 hours of Galactic Guardians breakdown in the previous episode. And if you like what you hear, hit up Mr. Howard Brock on AC Realms. Let him know that you appreciate what he's doing, because to shout out Clickscast, if I didn't hear him on there, I wouldn't have known about it. And I really haven't followed HeroClix Online, and Mr. Brock has really made me interested in trying to at least, give it a more serious chance. So hit him up, tell him that I sent you. Mr. Brock, you have anything you want to say to the nice people as we conclude?
No, I'm just usually, I'm one of those few people that do a little different than I do. I have 1 foot in tabletop and 1 foot in HCO, so I understand both worlds. I attend conventions, and I support them both, and so I understand where most people are coming from. And and I also have an overabundance of time on my hands, so I'm pretty readily available online or at Realms, and I usually respond pretty quick if you need me. And one more thing is I'm going to throw in a little wrinkle here. I'm going to say next time that I talk to you, I'd like to talk about DragonCon. There's some really neat tie-ins into HCO and HCOL and some really neat things coming up there, and would love to talk to you about DragonCon one day.
Okay. And you heard it here first, people. I'm going to have him back. We're going to talk about DragonCon, so if you know anyone that's interested in playing HeroClix there or playing in general, we'll have them on before the event happens. All right. Well, this is the Starting Over podcast, and we know we all have to start over sometime. Thank you for listening, and we'll check you next time.